Holly Lamar is with us. I told the story of Holly's ordeal as best I could based on the media reports about it. And thankfully, I think a mutual friend of mine and yours was listening, maybe alert. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how you found out that we were talking about you.
Just one of my local friends in Whites Creek, Jolton area, he hangs out at our local hang. He's my
We need
mechanic.
to properly introduce her.
I said Holly Lamar. I don't.
Infamous wildlife criminal. And well, they tried to get me over in England on something. Just again, it's amazing when you've done one thing in your life, how many people come out of the closet and try to take you down somehow.
Does it? I ask this of you. Just I'm compelled to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was an international.
It was the most played song in the whole world on radio in the year 2000.
And I was in country music at the time, and it stood apart even from anything else that was going on, and it crossed over, and it was a pop hit as well. But does that ever get tiresome? That's what people know you for?
No, not at all. I'm just happy that to have made people happy. That's
for those
it.
who don't know, Holly
I did co-write. Yes, Breathe.
Amongst other things, you've got
sung
some
by
other songs.
Faith Hill, not written by her, but sung very well by her.
There's no question.
And produced by
Songwriter wrote a #1 song. It's terrible. She can't stand it.
I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying. So, how does my natural curiosity gets the better of me because I want to talk to you a lot about this wildlife deal because it's crazy.
Yeah.
But how does that happen that you get connected with someone like Faith Hill? Do they say, hey, we like this song?
I actually called up Missy Gallimore, Byron Gallimore's wife, who listens to songs for both Faith and Tim and has for many years for Tim before, he found Faith.
Right.
That's a good song title. I Found Faith.
Yeah.
Come on, Tim. Give me a call. Let's write it. Actually, I got a great song title, man.
He did one of your songs too, didn't he?
He did. Unbroken.
Yeah.
She unbroke him.
So you kind of, there's a go-between where somebody can listen and then they pass it along.
Yeah, there's A&R, artist and rep, and they'll listen. And I had a publishing deal just up the street at Buddy Killin Music Group at the time. And I had gone and pitched her a song a month or two before, and I just said, hey, I got you something. And I went and played it for Tim, and she put it on hold for Tim. And I don't know, 6 months later, he decided that he thought Faith should do it. So
that's awesome. Are you still writing?
I am, actually. I don't. I got so busy, I was gone for 12 years. I just left the business, just sick of it, know. And the business. I didn't leave music, and then I decided. I went through actually a really rough period. I had all the money that I made from the music business stolen in a fraud. Man, I've got. If there's any producers out there for documentaries, I have a life story that is beyond, from start to finish. I've had a pretty unbelievable life.
Did you come to Nashville to get into the music industry?
Yeah, I did. I was on Wall Street. I was a Wall Street banker. I worked for Solomon Brothers. And I decided, I went and saw a friend of mine in a play. It was Shakespeare. And I just thought, God, I always wanted to act and perform and sing. I mean, I was the little girl with the round hairbrush. I would do my bangs like Farrah Fawcett and Olivia Newton-John, and then I'd spend the rest of the day singing into the round hairbrush like it was a microphone.
Right. and what you say that you were just burnt out? I was just burnt out on the business part of it. The business side of it can just chew you up.
And I just wasn't, inspired at the time. And I pulled a geographic and moved to England. And I had a spiritual midlife crisis, basically. And I fell in love with a chicken. And I somehow ended up on a backyard chicken webcam.
By the way, also a great line for a song. I fell in love with a chicken.
I fell in love with a chicken, yeah. I sleep with my rooster. And in England, they say cockerel. I love my cockerel.
Do you really sleep with your rooster?
Are we going to ever get to this wildlife? You're going to have to have me back.
We're slowly sliding over this.
Slowly.
How many chickens do you have?
Well, now I have 5 at the moment. I hadn't had any for a while, but I moved to England and I was just having a spiritual midlife crisis, and I read a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
And I just ended up down at the Vauxhall City Farm in London one day, and I just fell madly in love with a little bantam chicken, and I brought her home, named her Pansy, and after a couple of weeks, she went, and so I decided to get a couple more so Pansy would quiet down.
Right.
Pansy was Pedro.
All right.
And then I ended up somehow clicked onto a webcam of somebody's backyard chickens, and next thing you know, I'm on a webcam with these bald eagles in Decorah, Iowa, and a million people were watching these bald eagles just having their breeding season, and I got glued to it. It was like real life. It was a connection with nature.
So you feel a connection with all things fowl?
Yes. Don't foul with me,
right?
Okay.
And you brought that obviously back to America, back to the States, back to Nashville.
Yeah, I learned in England where falconry is. Falconry is actually a UNESCO World Intangible Cultural Heritage. It's one of the oldest forms of hunting and survival for man, along with dogs and falconry. And the sad thing is here in the United States, a lot of people think it's cruel because they see these wild birds and they think, oh, they need to be out there flying. But everything that we've ever domesticated, when it's in captivity, if it's well cared for, 50% of all raptors die within their first year. So we're actually out there if we're taking them from the wild, we're actually a lot of times getting one that maybe is a little bit weaker, and we put it back together and we release it back to the wild. But it's 7,000 years old, falconry, And so in England, it's just part of their culture.
But that's where you developed the love?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. But it was from watching the wild eagles here in the United States. And what happened was one of the nests I was watching, a bald eagle was killed by a plane in Norfolk, Virginia, and with babies in the nest.
Mm-hmm.
And the Wildlife Center of Virginia had to take the babies and rear them in seclusion and re-release them to the wild. So I decided I wanted to do raptor rehabilitation, and I decided to learn falconry to do that. And then just after a week of learning falconry, I decided to get one, and I got a red tail, a captive bred red tail.
When was that?
This was 2011.
Okay.
2012, yeah.
And so that just grew into a passion, a love.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I realized at the end of my first year of doing it that I spent more time in the present moment in that year than I had in 43 years all put together.
You're not worried about this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, you can't think about
there.
anything else. You can't think about where I need to be in 5 years externally, financially, or with this house, this car, this whatever. Because when I made $1 million, I thought, well, I've arrived. I'm going to be happy now. But I wasn't.
Right.
I wasn't any happier. I still had the same inner issues,
Was it the old quote from, I think it was Prince that said, money does not buy you happiness, but it does make it easier to look for it.
God bless Prince, man. I miss him.
Talking about a songwriter.
Yeah.
Good gracious.
God, one of my biggest influences, yeah.
So how did you start? I mean, it was just a slow process where you get a falcon, you get into and then slowly but surely you get more, I guess?
Yeah, I got a red tail and I started hunting it. And the strange thing is, God has a sense of humor. Because I was mostly vegan at that point.
Right.
And here I am having to, help dispatch a rabbit that my red tail has caught. And a lot of people kind of gave me a hard time about it. They didn't think I could do it.
I bet it doesn't go well in the vegan community when you tell them about your day.
Well, the thing is, it's real vegans appreciate nature and the fact that there is a design, and these creatures are a part of that design. And that's what it taught me. It's like everything can be viewed differently from a different perspective. It wasn't such a good time for that rabbit, but the bird gained his independence, and I worked with him and he saw me as his hunting partner. And, that made me realize that we are all connected, man, whether you know it or not. Experientially, the truth is my soul, your soul, the soul of that bird, there's a connection, and it's all a thread. There's no such thing as chaos out there.
So how many, eventually, how many birds did you, how many do you have now?
I think 13 thereabouts. Right. I mean, that sadly, one of them died in their care.
Right.
My most special one, unfortunately. The one, interestingly, I named her Faith.
Wow.
After Faith Hill. And I got her around the time that I found out that all of my money that I sold my catalog before I moved to England and I sold it for over $1 million. And I was defrauded of all of that money by sadly, a Mormon with 7 kids here in the United States. I was investing in a company, and the middleman was my friend's boss, and he literally just took my money and never gave it to the company. He collected it, sent it to Asia. I never saw it again. I lost everything. And so I named this falcon. I had just gotten this falcon. She was about 13 days old, and I named her Faith, to have faith that somehow things would come right for me, and somehow, some way, the universe would take care of me and get my money. It wasn't the money; it was my life's work.
Right?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like they didn't take $600,000. They took the art that I sold for that the blood, sweat, and tears.
It's one thing if it's an equitable transaction. It's another thing if they steal it from you. Right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he just took it. I got him sent to prison for a year, man. I don't know. Somehow God keeps putting me in these places to send people to prison. I'm hoping that's going to happen in this case.
I'm kind of hoping that I'm not next, honestly, to be frank.
Yeah, just don't mess with me.
So how in the world, so here you are, you're back in Nashville.
I came back to songwrite to write out the hurt, that I've gone through. And
then you collect, you start, I don't know if you collect or gather falcons.
I got my permits. No. I have owls, hawks, really, hawks are, a red-tailed hawk is really a buzzard, believe it or not. And a turkey buzzard is not a buzzard, it's a vulture. Just if you guys learn nothing out there today, know this. Those buzzards ain't buzzards. They're turkey vultures.
A hawk is a buzzard, and a turkey buzzard is a vulture.
Well, what we think of as hawks. Red tails are buzzards. Buteo jamaicensis, Jamaican buzzard.
I have an incredible...
But a Cooper's hawk is a hawk. That's an accipiter. It's an actual hawk.
Are you writing all this down, Kay?
These are things you need to know,
be writing
man.
These things down, because there's going to be a test later.
Yeah. So, but this is what I teach people, and it's wonderful because people learn to recognize what they see in the wild, and because they get to see it up close and interact with it. I fly a little American kestrel to people, so now people know when they see an American kestrel, and what that means is they then know if something's injured or whatever, how to maybe take care of it. And
so this is, obviously songwriting is going to be always in your heart and in your mind, but this seems like your true passion.
It's a massive passion of mine. It's a spiritual, it's healing. The main reason is it was healing for me. And I get a lot of people that come out that have like autism and PTSD and veterans, and get people to be depressed. It helps with depression because it keeps you out of that monkey mind. Birds are a little, especially birds of prey, they're a little like, and forgive me, this might hurt your soul, Holly, but I'm going to say it. They're a little like reptiles, like big reptiles, because I get the sense that if they thought they could, they would just go ahead and kill me. No, it's not true at all.
You don't think if your falcon thought that it could take you?
No, they don't. That's the thing. They don't think like that. They sit around 98% of the time doing nothing. And the only reason they kill is to eat and when they're hungry, and actually.
I'm pretty sure if we found a human-sized falcon, that falcon would take you out.
Do you know that a peregrine falcon could take you out if you were up in the air? A 2-pound peregrine falcon could hit you
200 miles an hour,
250 miles an hour.
Fastest,
if it hits you, fastest creature
on the
air,
planet.
land, sea. Yeah.
Because when they go into their
they're
their
stooping.
dive,
It's
right?
a living bullet, and they don't grab when they hit. They just whack things. Blunt
Knock 'em
force
out.
trauma.
Yeah, knock 'em out.
But
They got little hard heads. Is that what-
No, it's the tarsus. It's the ankle of the
Oh, really?
bird.
Of
Just
the- of
hits,
their- of their wing.
But what's amazing is they're
They don't break themselves.
exactly they're having that impact at 230 miles an hour too. But
So they literally just kind of knock people out with their fist. Kind of.
not people,
But you know what I'm saying.
other birds, yeah. But I always tell people if you're up on a cell tower and a peregrine falcon's diving towards you, man, duck.
Well, I guess so. All right,
Or get down.
We're going to get to the point
Yeah.
in just a moment. We got a quick time out to take, but when we come back, we'll find out why in the world the TWRA came to Holly's home and took her 13 birds. Holly Lamar is our guest. It is 122 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Back in a moment.
Download the TuneIn app so you can take WTN with you wherever you go.
Hey, friends, Paul Winkler and Paul Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Compelling conversation with Holly Lamar. You might know Holly due to her songwriting prowess and skills over the years in Music City, but we invited her on the show, connected as a result of a lawsuit that she has filed against 3 agents with the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, the TWRA, after they raided her home, seized 13 of her captive bred birds of prey last year, and only returned 12 of them, and dropped all. Well, I don't want to get ahead of the story. Why did they raid your house?
Well, an officer took over the position of licensing and permitting over falconry and other parts of hunting and stuff like that.
So you have to get a license to keep these birds?
Oh, yeah, falconry license.
Okay.
You have to have a falconry
Is there
license.
a cap in the number that you're supposed to have?
Well, that's the big question, actually. And it's interesting because the federal law mainly is that you can only have 5 birds from the wild total. In other words, if you go out and you trap a bird from the wild, you can only have 5 of those total on your falconry license, but an unlimited number of captive bred birds.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I don't remember when, maybe back in 2008, 2013, when the state made their law. Falconry was turned over to the state, basically, from the federal government. The federal government U.S. Fish and Wildlife retains the right to issue other permits that I have, but the specific falconry permit, they turned that over to the states. And each state had to submit what they thought, what they were going to do. And basically, they made a typo. And instead of putting 5 wild taken birds that you could have on your license, it just said 5 raptors, 5 live migratory raptors. Now, a lot of people don't understand what the word migratory means. It comes from the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. It's a bird that is migratory to the United States. Those are the only birds that we regulate, that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regulates, is birds that are migratory, and it's part of this North American Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So that's what that definition means. And in this particular case, they took birds that aren't even regulated by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And clearly they should have known that. And they're not required to be on my falconry license unless I'm hunting them, which I wasn't. And that was all made very clear with this guy's predecessor. So this officer came and took over from another guy named Walter Cook, who retired. He'd been doing it for, 20 years or something.
You had a good relationship with
I did. He gave me my falconry license.
Okay.
And, you'd ask him a question and he'd give you the answer. And if he didn't know it, he'd try and go get it. Well, at the time when this guy took over, and I'm going to say something right now that's going to be really shocking, but he told, this was after the seizure, but he told a couple of falconers, the president of the Tennessee Falconers Association, I believe, the president and the vice president, that, quote, as closely as I can, when I took this job, I knew I was going to have to shoot a hostage. And you guys are all just lucky that Holly Lamar walked into my crosshairs.
What? So he felt it.
he thought
it was his job to eliminate people like you?
Yeah. Yeah, and he kept thinking he thought it was wrong that I was earning any money off of educating people about wildlife by doing falconry, which to me, I'm sitting there, all my birds are captive bred. They're not from the wild. I'm not allowed to use birds from the wild for my falconry school educational permit. But I'm sitting there doing a really good job for TWRA. I'm educating people. They're getting to see an American kestrel up close that's not injured, right? That they, when wildlife rehabbers and nature centers, when they do educational efforts, you can't touch those birds. You don't get to interact with them, and you don't see them fly. Right. When I do it, you see them fly. You get to handle them and know. You get to have an experience.
So this guy takes over, and he's got an agenda, apparently, and
he decides to reinterpret the law.
And so he comes
misinterpret
and through, was he kind of the lead guy that got
He was the guy.
He was the guy.
Yeah. He got the Davidson County officer to get the search warrant. But basically, to get the search warrant, they omitted the law. They basically omitted the law. They decided that this 5-bird limit on the falconry license, which is so clear in law, the judge said that. First of all, the laws are incredibly ambiguous, and none of the pieces fit together, really.
But I don't mean to jump too far ahead of the story, but they seized all of your birds. They've since returned
birds that they had
they
don't even regulate.
Outside of the one that died. They've returned all of your birds,
well,
and they've charged you with nothing.
They were ordered to.
Right.
No, they charged me, and they charged me with 30 misdemeanors.
And then they dropped the charges. Is that right?
Well, the TWRA didn't, but the DA did, yes.
Okay, just another quick timeout.
TWRA wanted to keep
pressing on with it?
Oh, absolutely.
We'll talk about that in just a moment, because this is an organization, I don't know that they're answerable to anyone, and I'm very confused by that. It's 1:32, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Take a quick
This
timeout.
report is sponsored by Pirani's Hockey World. Great news, hockey players. Pirani's Hockey World's annual summer clearance.
All right, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A couple of additional moments with Holly Lamar. Mentioned her story last week. It struck my interest because I've heard so many things about the TWRA, and most of them negative. And we've had conversations in my 2 years in Nashville and in Middle Tennessee about this. And her story extends beyond just a conversation about birds and falconry and wildlife, but more about the ability and the willingness for the government of the United States of America, whether it comes in the form of the Department of Justice or the TWRA, if they have the ability, they will just sadly. They will trample your rights. You got it over there? Thank you. Holly Lamar is with us, and we're right at the point where they decided to seize your birds. You had 13 at the time?
Well, I made a complaint against this officer, and I actually sent probably 20 emails with the 7 to 10 days before the search warrant to the executive director, because for months this guy had been trying to bully and intimidate me. He wouldn't give me answers. I was going to them saying, hey, I've got these federal permits. I'm trying to do good stuff here for the citizens of Tennessee and educate them and do good things, for falconry. And it's a cultural heritage. Right. And, and he just, he wasn't doing his job, basically. He was saying, well, I got to go out and do all these inspections. He was never even in the office, and he couldn't get answers. At the time they were switching the director, the legal team was fired. He didn't even understand the law. I understood the law, and I kept trying to tell him, and multiple people were trying to educate him. He didn't want to hear it.
So he got a search warrant.
He wanted to get somebody, right. And he wanted... well, now somebody just made a complaint. A rehabber just made a complaint where he said to them that he just wanted to get rid of falconry in Tennessee. And I had an assistant park warden for Tennessee Parks come out to one of my falconry experiences, and he said his dad was a falconer 20 years ago, and he says TWRA has ruined falconry. And the thing is, they've ruined a lot of sports. I know a lot of hunters, and they're just out to get you. It's become just enforcement. It's not about conservation. It's not about protecting the resources. It's not about enjoyment of livelihood, freedom to pursue happiness. It's about, I need to get somebody, I need to get him a ticket, and I need to get somebody so I can get a stripe on my arm.
So they get a search warrant claiming that, you had too many wild birds?
No, that I just had more birds than the 5 that I was allowed on my falconry license.
Which is obviously not the case because they returned them all to you. Except
absolutely,
the one that died in the coop.
because that limit, even that was wrong, actually. It should have been 5 wild birds and unlimited captive bred.
Right.
But that was a mistake written in the laws. And so now, we're actually renegotiating the regulations at this point. And I spoke at the Wildlife Commission meeting.
When they came in, they just came in, they saw the birds, they took the birds and left.
Yeah, but they had every reason to know. The guy from Davidson County had worked under Walter Cook before, and Walter Cook knew that exotics, birds that are not indigenous to the United States, they have no rights.
This is like one of the reasons that this
they took
case
birds that they have no
right. That's your
right.
property. So this intrigues me because this is like asset forfeiture.
Totally.
That and we've talked about this in the past, where a government entity comes in and declares you guilty until proven innocent, and they take your assets, and you have to go to court and spend a tremendous amount of money proving that you've done nothing wrong under the law.
And if they hadn't charged me, I had no recourse. They could have just kept those birds. I could not. I would have had to maybe file a lawsuit to get those birds back.
So they charged you with what?
They charged me with 30 misdemeanors, like not having water in a bath when my employee was there.
So did they
pressure washing baths.
Did they accuse you of being a bird hoarder? Is that
no, not at all. No.
So but they just charged you with everything.
It was just everything they could think of. They
and the DA dropped all those charges.
Everything, yeah. They knew they were in bad shape.
When did you get your birds back? Before or after they dropped the charges? I
got 5 back New Year's Day, actually, after the peregrine falcon died. That was, and I do want to say that half of my birds were kept at Walden's Puddle, which is a rehab center. Mm-hmm. The other half were at Middle Tennessee Raptor Center. They were not capable of keeping birds like that. Birds that are captive bred, falconry birds. They don't know what they're doing. The peregrine falcon that died, even on the necropsy they sent, and they said that she had no prior treatment. Now, I don't know if that was TWRA who said that or the rehab or Walden's Puddle, but that wasn't true. 2 days before she died, they took her to the vet. They were grabbing them up every week. They took her to the vet, and sedated and intubated her, in order just to cope her beak, to trim her beak. 2 days before she died. Another falcon they were giving Valium to for 4 months. And then at the Middle Tennessee Raptor Center, 3 of my birds were kept in dog kennels for 5 months. They had the gall to say, once they took my birds, they knew they messed up, but then they couldn't go backwards. They should have just at that point returned at least the 5 birds that technically, legally, they said I had a license for.
When did, and if you have 5, well, it's odd because you would think if you were violating the number, they would have let you keep the 5 from the beginning.
Exactly. I only had 4 birds on my falconry license. Not only that, but the law that was still on the TWRA website, the falconry rule, said that it didn't even include falcons. So it only included hawks and owls. And I only had 4 birds, period, that were even included under that rule. They didn't even have the law updated on their website.
So you're suing?
Yes.
Tell me why.
They violated my constitutional rights. They were responsible for the care of my birds. They
and
basically,
one died in their care.
Yeah. But the reason they did this is they wanted to shut my business down. And because I was earning money off of educating people about wildlife. Well, isn't he earning money? Isn't that officer earning money? Isn't Jason Maxedon, the head of TWRA, earning money?
So where are we? You filed suit, and
I filed the lawsuit.
What happens next?
We have a case management hearing in November, And that's when the lawyers will meet and put out a timeline for discovery and freedom, all that kind of stuff. Depositions.
Has the TWRA left you alone since they've returned your birds? I mean, has it been relatively, has there been a...
Yes and no. We are now, I've been serving on the committee with the Tennessee Falconers Association. All of this basically lit a fire under the fact that these rules and regulations are badly written, and the falconers now, after 20 years, are standing up for their rights.
How many falconers are there in Tennessee?
Around 100.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're finally standing up for our rights. We've been told things that weren't true for about 20 years. We were told we couldn't breed indigenous raptors like peregrine falcons. That's not true. So just nobody ever checked the laws. You know what I mean? And their laws are badly written. You can't understand them. I've got a friend who's a falconer. He's a lawyer. He says, I can't even understand these laws. They don't make sense. So we're trying to rewrite those laws. And right now we're stuck on this, my federal permit, which is a falconry school permit. According to the laws right now, they want me to get an exhibitor permit, which costs $1,220. But if I get that, then I won't be able to buy and sell birds on that permit, which means I can't do it unless I buy a commercial propagation license, which is $3,000. So I'd have to spend over $4,000 just to be able to show people, the citizens of Tennessee who deserve the right to be able to see a bird that's indigenous to Tennessee, like my American kestrel or my peregrine falcon.
If people want to find out more about you and what you do, how do they reach you?
Yes, Wing Blade Falconry. I actually named it after the movie Sling Blade. You remember, with Billy Bob Thornton?
Mustard.
And Billy and I did some music together. I sang on his album.
Mustard and biscuits.
Yeah.
I love you, boy.
Oh boy. So it's Wing Blade Falconry.
Dwight Yoakam, most fabulous performance of his illustrious.
Oh, I love Dwight.
career.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I wrote with Dwight as well. He was good. He's so talented.
He's got skinnier legs than you.
I know. I've actually.
You would like Dwight Yoakam because he's got the bird legs.
He handed down a pair of jeans to me, actually, that I could fit in.
Holly, it's been fascinating for me, and it's more than just, and I know that some people are like, oh, you're talking about birds. It's more than just a bird story. It's a government overreach story. It's a constitutional rights story.
Yeah.
And I hope
TWRA needs an overhaul, big time.
And I think you're drawing a highlight to that, and I'm glad
that doesn't mean there aren't good people, good officers who care about wildlife. Sure. People get into it because they care, but it's just being ruined by these people who they just have an enforcement background. Mm-hmm. And all they want to do is enforce whatever they can.
Well, and some people have power trips. And it sounds like you're dealing with somebody with a little
extreme
bit of a
narcissism.
Trip. Well, keep us up to date. We'll keep in communication. Wing Blade Falconry.
Yes.com.